As the saying goes, you don't get results when you work out, you get results when you recover. It's actually technically not true because recovery always happens, but of course you don't always get results. But nevertheless, it does behoove us to try to find ways to speed up recovery so that way you can train more frequently and more productively. And there's a lot of things out there that are promising faster recovery, all sorts of, techniques and potions and things like that. But by and large, these things have a relatively small influence on your recovery. Instead, today we're going to talk about what are the most important things for recovery and why having less recovery is actually a very good thing. The single most important thing for your recovery by far is sleep. So if you're struggling to have consistent sleep, long enough sleep, and deep enough sleep, that's easily where you want to put most of your attention. And I recognize that's a little different for everybody. Some people have more trouble getting good sleep. Sometimes it may behoove you to see a professional about it. But if you're not prioritizing sleep, start there. The second biggest thing is, of course, diet. And this is where a lot of people go off the rails with good intentions, because what they're trying to do is, quote, eat right, which usually means you got to follow some sort of a restrictive diet that tells you not to eat things. But instead, we want to recognize that a good diet for recovery is one that satisfies your appetites rather than holds you back. So make sure you're getting plenty of food, you're eating plenty of calories, you're getting plants and proteins at every single meal, and you're not following any sort of plans that have sort of cockamamie restrictions like, never eat certain foods and stuff like that, especially if they're fairly well-based whole foods like don't eat anything with fat in it or carbs or something like that. And then the third thing is avoiding excessive stress, especially where it doesn't need to be. And this is a lot of times due to exposure to things that are stressing you out mentally, emotionally, or even down the road physiologically, things like negative and toxic media, social media, anything that's causing you to really kind of feel a lot of this, that's not helping your recovery, and it's not helping you live a better life either. So managing that sort of mental and emotional stress goes a long way in helping you recover faster. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is that recovery is actually, in some ways, kind of a bad thing. Because no, you don't get results from recovery, you get results from adaptation. Because the physiological process of how fitness fundamentally works is that our training imparts a stimulus, and then we adapt to that stimulus. And the more stress that you have in your life from your workouts, the more recovery you need. But adaptation isn't recovery. It's the ability to change, but that takes resources. So does recovery. So if you need a lot of recovery, that means you have less physiological, mental, and emotional resources to allow that adaptation to happen in the first place. So that's why one of the best ways to speed up recovery is to not need as much of it in the first place. That's why a lot of times with strength training, particularly for building muscle, I use my double tap training strategy, which is 2 primary hard work sets per exercise. You can always do more work. You can always impart more stress upon your body, but the more you stress out your body and beat and thrash it down, the more stress you have on your muscles, the more damage you're incurring, therefore the more recovery you need. And that means you have to spend more of your sleep and your protein and your calories and more of your time fixing your body rather than building it up. Of course, you're going to have some degree of stress and you're going to have some need for recovery with hard training. That's just the cost of doing business. But not going after that stress and that beat down of your body and not striving after it goes a long way in focusing on creating a stimulus with the least amount of stress, therefore requiring less recovery, which gives you more of the ability to adapt and actually get the results that you want. More information and double tap training down below in the description, including my podcast and videos on it. Be fit and live free.